Hi, good morning. Right, today's live match is back at Tunnel Barn Farm for round 8 of the Teams of 4 Winter League. And I've been drawn a very good peg. I've been drawn Jenny's 13 with the wind hacking into it. I'll just show you the peg. So like, it's an M peg. The next peg to me is on the far bank over there on peg 8. So look, I'm hoping to catch all my fish that way, because looking the other way, it is blowing an absolute hoolie. We've got Jack O'Sullivan on peg, what is it, 14, 15, peg 16. We've all parked our vans to act as light windbreaks, because I've already had my roller go over with a pole on. I managed to save it before it hit the deck. So I've got them weighted down to try and help keep them in place. There's Lovell. Give us a wave. He's a wave, Jack. There you go, Jack O'Sullivan. So, as long as I don't get blown off my box, I should catch a few today. I hope so. I hope I can do the peg justice, because it is a good peg. I know the conditions are bad, but it's not a cold wind, it's a nice warm wind. So hopefully there'll be some fish up here. We'll give it a go. So when I turned up at Tunnel Barn on the Saturday morning for the match, Steve Lovell had already done the team draw. The team draw looked okay, to be fair, with me on Jenny's 13. And to be honest, I really fancied it. And so did everybody else. I mean, a few people had tipped me to win the match. I felt there'd be loads of fish there, as there was a nice warm wind blowing into the peg, and we all know F1s follow the wind. But I wish I'd have checked the sheets from the previous rounds before I set my stall out to fish it as positive as I did, because they didn't make good reading, to be fair. I think 8th in section was the best result to come off the peg, which isn't that good. It's okay. It's an average return, but it's not what I was expecting, to be honest. And it gave me a false hope. You know, with people telling me how good it is and all that. Well, if I'd have checked the result sheets before I fished the match, I'd have fished a totally different match. I know I would. I mean, it was a real slow start as well. I tried dobbing around the peg and I just could not get an indication anywhere where I expected to have a good start on it. I tried down the pallets, down the rebeds, over to the island and in the deeper water, and I just couldn't find anything. But when I plumbed up on the morning, I never felt a fish when I was plumbing up. That did concern me a little bit. As if there's any number of fish there, you do tend to find some with a plummet, and I never found any at all. So, like I say, I was a bit concerned. After having a good job around the peg, I had a look down the middle on pellets to see if I could tempt anything there, and I never had an indication. So I fed some maggots over towards the shelf on the far bank, and I never had a bite there either. I was really worried. I picked up the dobbing rig again and had another look, and it was probably about 40 minutes into the match before I eventually got an indication. I was so relieved at that point, I must say. And it was only a stocky, but it got me off the mark, which made me feel a bit better, because I was starting to panic a bit. Jack on peg 16, he'd started down the track on pellets. I don't think he caught anything, but he went over to the rebeds feeding some maggots and failed up to carp. I think he lost that fish. So he's gone back over dobbing and had a steady run of fish, whereas I could not get an indication doing it. I had that one bite, thinking I'd found some fish, and I never found any more. Like I say, I was starting to panic a bit because I just couldn't get bites. Peg 8 opposite me was absolutely shedding. So it was clear he was on a lot of fish there. And I'm sure I haven't done it that wrong to avoid them all. I just could not get bites. While setting up in the morning, I decided to get a feeder rod out in case the weather got so bad as I couldn't hold the pole at all. and hoped that I could possibly add a few extra fish throwing towards the second pallet. It got to a point where I was desperate for it to work because I just couldn't make anything else work. Not only was it windy, there was proper gusts to the wind as well, and at times it's turned you around on your box. That bang you just heard was my van door slamming shut. Like I said earlier on, we parked the vans to conceal it from the wind, or to hide the rollers and that from the wind, which worked okay when it was blowing up the pool, but a lot of the time it was blowing from behind, so the van didn't add any protection at all. I'm getting desperate now, so I've chucked the feeder towards that pallet, hoping that something will happen. There's big F1s in this lake, and you don't need many to get a good weight. At long last, I've hooked one, and it's a decent F1 as well. Whilst unhooking this one, I was praying that I'd go in and get another one, because things weren't looking good, because I was falling way behind and I just didn't know what to do, to be honest. So I'm chucking the feeder directly in front of the pallet, which is probably around 2 to 2.5 feet deep. It's my normal feeder setup for this time of year, which is the Superior SL 10 foot, and I'm using a size 16 GPMB with a microband, and into that I'm putting 2 red maggots. I'm loading the feeder up with 5 or 6 maggots. Whilst I'm on the phone to Lloydie, the tip goes round again. Happy days. I'm thinking, please let there be a few fish there. I've had to turn the volume right down on this video because the wind noise on the film itself was really bad. And I know a few people have commented on it in the past that it's a bit distracting. So hopefully this isn't so bad. Right, so I've had 2 fish on this line now, and I'm already starting to think maybe I'll catch on the pallet immediately to my left, which is probably about 11 metres away. I'm hoping that I can introduce a little bit of feed there and be able to switch between the 2 lines to keep fish coming. But while this keeps going round, I'm going to stay doing what I'm doing. I'm still on the phone to Lloydie. We're both having a right moan about the situations we're in. The chap on peg 8 is still catching lots of fish, and he's catching them off multiple lines as well. Jack next door is still catching fish as well, and he's managing to catch them on the far line. When the wind got too bad, he picked up the rod. I think he was fishing a little 7 foot onesie and giving it a lovely little underarm cast to get across. Something I'm rubbish at doing. And he's putting a tidy net of fish together. That bite never took long. Please let there be a few fish here. For the pallet line immediately to my left, I'd set up a 4x12 F1 maggot rig to fish there, but I'm already thinking it's not big enough. So during the next cast, I take that off and put a 4x14 F1 maggot float on, and I bulk the shot down and have a couple of droppers below. Even though it's only like 2.5 foot of water, I just felt that that'd give me miles better presentation. And as I'm doing that, the tip goes round again. That's fish number 4 on the feeder, but the next bite signals the end of the action. I catch a little roach. That usually means there's no F1s left there, so I'll give it a rest and see if I can catch on the pole towards the pallet to my left, and hope that some more regroup on that pallet for later on.
That's the end of that, eh? It's gonna be.
So it's time to pick up the pole and have a look on the pallet at peg 12 and hope that I can catch some fish there as well. The ideal world would be for me to rotate the 2 lines. There were a good stamp fish that I was catching on the feeder, so hopefully there'll be a decent stamp of fish down the pallet. First bite there was off a roach. That was a little disappointing. But the next bite was an F1. Me and Lloyd were on the phone again, moaning again about what's going on. He's not catching very well either. It just feels like something's starting to happen in my peg now by just rotating the 2. Well, hopefully I can rotate the 2 lines on the 2 pallets and keep a few fish ticking over. They're a good stamp fish and well worth catching. Good weight builders, and I really need it. 2 red maggots on the hook, and 5 or 6 the average stamp of the fish in this lake is quite big, I'm using Duraslip 9 on the maggot rigs and Duraslip 11 on the dobbin rigs. There's another fish on the pallet line. Happy days. You can see how gusty the wind is. Just made for a really difficult day. Starting to get visions of being able to pull back into the game at the minute. But with it being quite shallow water, I don't know whether they'll stay there because the pool is still quite clear. They're a lovely stamp fish. Jenny's pool at Tunnel Barn is renowned for the big F1s. This Gus, he pushed my pole out. I couldn't hold onto it properly. After a little run of fish on the pole, I have another look on the feeder to see if I can get a run of fish there as well. But I never had another indication there the rest of the day, which was very disappointing. So I back down the edge. Oh, look at that. Gust of winds blow my 14.5 metre section into the pool. Lucky for me, it just sat there on the top. It must have landed flat and it gave me enough time to get down to save it. I couldn't believe my luck, to be honest. Normally that would have hit the water and sunk straight away. Still a few fish to be caught down that pallet. The size seems to have gone now, then I'm only catching stockies. But I'm not fussy, I'll catch what I can. That's pretty much how I saw the match out, was down to that left hand side by that pallet. I did have one fish on the top kit line, which was probably my biggest fish of the day, an F1 of around £4. I'd just been flicking a few maggots out at a top kit range because it's quite deep there, and I thought maybe, you never know. It was the only line I could feed and get it fairly accurate. Just the one fish there with about 15 minutes to go had me thinking maybe it'll end up decent, but no, never mind. So it was just a case of sitting on that pallet line and just waiting for the fish to turn up. Come the end of the match, I ended up with 14 F1s and a couple of silvers. I'd say 8 of them would be big F1s and the rest were little ones, little stockies. Very disappointing £38 1 ounces. The pool was warming £92. That was on peg 8. Jack to my right weighed £60 and he finished 5th in the section with that. I finished with, like I say, I finished with £38 1 ounces, and that put me 11th in the section. I was so disappointed with that result. I've been going there and doing well throughout the league. I'd had one blip before this match, and I was bitterly disappointed, to be honest, mainly with myself. If I'd have checked the results on previous rounds, I know I'd have fished a different match. I may not have caught more fish, but I'd have gone there with a different attitude, and maybe I would have caught more fish and done a little better. But I don't think there was enough fish in the peg to do any serious damage. That's my excuse anyway. So if you've enjoyed watching this video, please give it a like. And please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.